So good evening, Tewksbury. It is 6:05 PM on Thursday, September 19th, 2019. I'd like to call this meeting of the Tewksbury Board of Health to order. First item on our agenda tonight is approval of minutes from our July 18th, 2019 meeting. Both our clerk, Maria Razulis, who's not able to be in attendance tonight, and myself have reviewed meeting minutes, and they represent our reviews. Anyone have any questions or comments or changes they'd like to make to the meeting minutes?
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So hearing no edits required, anyone would like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. So motion has been put forth and second to approve the minutes as submitted for the July 18th, 2019 meeting of the Board of Health. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
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 Chair votes aye as well. Motion carries unanimously, 3-0. Okay. Moving on, I guess we can do the continuance of the old business because Member Scarano would have to recuse himself from discussion anyways, and since he's not present. So from old business, we have a continued, as it's listed in the agenda, public hearing from July for 1147 Main Street, and that was actually a continuance of a show cause hearing.
Don't believe, there's no one here for that right now?
Okay. So at this point, from the letter that you had issued back on May 17th, and Merrill McGreary, a lawyer that's representing the Board of Managers of Cottage Place, had replied, we're looking at the 120-day period that was in the order letter beginning or commencing in May 23rd, and that would mean 120 days would be tomorrow. So we're 1 day shy of that date the order needs to be in compliance, and they have yet to secure the required sewer permit. So obviously, they're not going to be able to get this sewer tie-in completed successfully by the end of business tomorrow.
Correct.
And in putting together a timeline, there are a couple of key dates I want to mention. Even though the lawyer representing Cottage Place has been before the Board of Health on both our June and July meetings, at the July meeting, they had assured us that this sewer tie-in would be completed by or before September 20th. And we don't even have a permit to perform the work yet. And it was day 85 out of the 120-day period that the department received a letter that there had been a signed contract between Houghton Property Management and Bradley Company for the sewer connection. So it had taken them 85 days from for them to secure a contractor, and we had been not willing to approve the request to extend because we figured it should be readily done within a 120-day or less period. So there's an awful lot of delays in trying to get to this point. So this is really the penalty phase of this whole project, and just for the board members as well, there were really two options that the board had at our discretion. First is we could have come up with a monetary penalty that would have been assessed a certain amount per day with each day that they were delayed in meeting the order as constituting a separate infraction, therefore incurring a separate charge. And the maximum that we would be able to charge on a daily basis is $300. But rather than take that approach, because that does not help the abutting property owners and what may be unknown environmental conditions resulting from a failed septic system or that's actual use is above what it was designed for use, that the only way to properly remedy this is to cap the output so that outflow from the septic tank no longer flows into the leaching field. And then as a result of that, the tank would then need to be pumped on a frequent basis before it overflowed. In individual discussions with members, we thought it was because the process to obtain the necessary permit has been protracted. And at this point, they're still waiting on 2 tenants to grant access to the plumbing inspector to do whatever pre-inspection he needs to do before the permit can be issued by DPW, or Building Department. We figured that we would give the property owners until next Friday, which is September 27th, to successfully tie into town sewer, so extending the order of 120 days by 7 days. And failure to do so is going to require that they lose the ability to use the septic system that's currently in use, and that they would need to cap the outlet on Monday. And at that point, because the tank will be filling up, they'll need to engage a pumping contractor who can then make sure that the tank is pumped when the tank is full enough and needs to be pumped, until such time as the sewer tie-in has been successfully completed. So that's one issue. The other issue still remains and I'll let you talk about this, Mr. Rue, the tank itself, once it's been abandoned, will need to either be crushed or filled with something so it no longer becomes a potential hazard. And there are other structures, I believe, that will need to be decommissioned as well.
That's true. I think there are 5 pits out there that need to be accessed and then abandoned,
Okay?
which there's a variety of different ways you can do that, but. Mr. Chairman, can I make a few comments to your?
Sure. Go right ahead.
I'm in business in town here, and I don't think it's fair to the other businesses what these select few, if not 1 or 2, are doing to their compadres at that site. As I said before, I think that Susan giving them 120 days was in excess of being generous. I spoke to Mr. Bradley again this afternoon. He is ready to do this. He can do it by next Friday. They're sitting on their hands over there, and I'm a little perturbed about the fact that I believe Attorney Severance was his name, sat in front of us and committed and assured us that this was going to be done actually before Friday. So I don't know what the recourse is on this, but I'm uncomfortable from a business perspective doing this to the other folks over there. But in the same breath, I'm a little hot with the attorney that came in here committing that he would do this in a very generous amount of time frame. So if there's 2 businesses in there, they can't access they don't have keys. That's not our problem. Thank you.
And I do have one question for you, Mr. Rue, just more to educate those that may be viewing us. I'd asked you a question before the meeting tonight about, from your professional opinion, how long should that sewer tie-in take for the contractor to perform the work?
To tie it in, he should take a morning to connect it.
So by us giving them 7 days or through next Friday, that should be more than enough time for them to be able to get
would
the
take
permits if the 2 tenants can actually grant access to the plumbing inspector, so the permit can be granted. then the contractor has more than enough time to get the work done by the Friday deadline.
And the property is accessible through another entrance and exit. It won't, the hookup is right on the James Street side, which is very low frequency traffic-wise. And there's another entrance and exit on Main Street that could be used. This thing shouldn't take but a morning to connect it and get it looked at, start backfilling. The other stuff with the concrete and/or hot top is another matter, but this is not a big deal.
Did he already dig safe in
I did see markouts on the street, I assume he
ahead
has.
of the game? Yeah.
Yeah, Mark would, he's in front of the game on that.
Yeah, and I think the board's frustration, this whole process is there are 28 units, not necessarily 28 tenants, but 28 units there. And it's a two-person board of trustees who retained a property management firm, who in turn retained a lawyer. And no one from the property management company has been in attendance at these meetings or hearings, nor either board member. And I think we've only had one tenant, aside from member Scarano, who was a tenant there, who's recused himself for obvious reasons.
And I have only spoken to the tenants who were looking to rent to new businesses. None of the other tenants have even reached out, and I'm not sure if it's lack of communication from their part. I mean, I know they had a meeting about it after our last Board of Health meeting, that next Monday. So they're all aware of these dates, and I'm not sure what held this all up, why someone didn't let the plumbing inspector, get access to those units.
I can only say as an individual board member, I think as a board, I think we've shown to the community that our first and foremost objective is to protect the public health of the community. But secondly, I hope that this isn't looked upon by others in the community as a precedent, because I am extremely disappointed with what transpired. I believe that the goodwill of the board and the community and the town was taken advantage of. I believe that there's been a lot of excuses, and about as politically correct as I can be. When I hear that they can't get access to the units, being a person that was the chairman of 300 units approximately, that every management company should have keys to access any unit should there be a problem. All I can say is I feel I was born in night, but not last night. I hope this isn't reflective of any further issues, because my tolerance is totally gone. We need to resolve this problem. And secondly, I just hope that others in the community watching this do not look at this as I feel that being fair has been abused from the board. And I know I, for one, will not tolerate this in any further. I mean, I know that I had agreed to go a little bit longer in good faith, give people the benefit of the doubt, but this has been totally one annoying, troublesome situation, and I'm disappointed that they didn't even have the decency to have someone show up. So I'm in accordance with Mr. Barry's recommendations at this point that we've kind of outlined a little bit here, and I'd just like to get this resolved quickly with that time frame, and agree with Mr. Rude too. This has to be resolved.
So before I go through the finding of facts for this, I just wanted to follow-up question, Mr. Rue. Because at our July meeting, we had informed lawyer representing Merrill and McGeary that the 120 days, our first focus was the sewer tie-in was completed by then, as opposed to the entire project of sewer tie-in and decommissioning of the existing subsurface structures. And I'd like to get your opinion as to what should we now state as an order for how long should they be given in order to get those subsurface structures decommissioned.
I know that you want to do them all at once, Ray, but I'm still.
I'm realistically.
Yeah, I know.
And we know that
Everybody-
that's the most expensive part of this project.
Yeah, That's my priority would be getting that thing connected and taking care of the cosmetics around the connection before the weather changes, when you can't get hot top and whatnot. But they may want to do the whole thing at once, which means they'd have to expedite the decommissioning of the 5 pits out there, and/or would have to pick a date early in the spring when pavement becomes available again, hot top becomes available again. But that's at this point, I will agree with anything you want to. If you want to have them do the whole thing in one shebang, that's fine with me too. I just want that thing connected by next Friday.
Yeah, and we're not privy to the details of the contract, so I'm not sure if the contract they have with Bradley,
I sent you the contract, right?
I don't
I'm not
think
sure
it
if
does.
it includes the decommissioning the structures, because that was expensive, and
It did.
it did.
That's why they wanted to, yeah. But
So
he
it-
also knew that we were
Yep.
able to separate them as far as getting it connected.
I
But
think
it's
we'll,
coming, yeah.
I think realistically, we need the problem resolved. We've been more than generous with time and tried to acknowledge any inconveniences. For one, I'm tired of excuses. I'd like to just see this resolved in the best interest of the town and the abutters.
So I'd say by calendar year or first frost, whichever you think is a more reasonable.
I just want to get it connected. And I think we can fool with that other stuff.
I think we eliminate I think
You
if we
wanna-
eliminate the problem, and then unfortunately, the situation, I believe, has arisen that we need to solve the immediate problem.
Yep.
I
And the
apologize.
aesthetics, that's extremely minor in my concern. Let's solve the immediate problem of the effluent.
And then the abandonment of the other components, so it's, we could, if you're,
I was incorrect, I apologize. I was told by the Hoden Properties that it was a soup to nuts, that it included it all, but that doesn't say that it does.
not,
I'm not sure I believe
Not for
anything
that.
Houghton Properties says anymore realistically after
You're right,
126
I don't
months.
know.
So I guess we should at least know that we don't want to give them a,
do we want to abandon these things? Do we want to complete the project in this season? Or do we want to do the connection and then allow them to ramble on like they've done with us?
My preference would be
Yeah.
this season,
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
because people just forget that
Yep.
they made promises
No,
from
then-
one day to the next.
No, they haven't been straightforward with us, I agree with that. So we do the connection first, and then immediately following, we've got to get some plan together.
Then they can work with what's
Yeah.
best with their clients and, and then pick a day that's,
To me, it sounds like they didn't even communicate with the people in their management
I don't
company
think
that
they
doesn't
did.
communicate with the owners. So I think that let's solve the immediate problem, and then let's get it done expeditiously.
when do they usually shut the plants, Charlie?
Depends what the weather does. They'll stay open as long as they can, but it starts getting cold, this stuff, by the time you get it to a site, it's no good to use.
October 30th, or is that too long?
It depends, sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's
Okay.
later. Last year, I think they were hauling through December, but
now is it first frost that more dictates, or is it just the
No,
the
yeah.
temperature?
no, it's got to stay cold for
2 days.
3 or 4 days in a row. I mean, cold.
I mean, you could always get them some in the winter, but it's more expensive too.
Right.
Somewhere, I mean, because there's always emergencies that happen to have.
No, I think we can influence them to get this thing connected, and then this season, get the rest of the components abandoned, and cosmetically, I don't care if we just want them abandoned. We just want those components filled. If they want a hot top or re-hot top, I don't care, but we want those, there are 5 chambers out there, five leaching pits. We abandon them, we get it connected to the sewer. We get it connected to the sewer first, then abandon them, and then the cosmetic ordeal,
do
they can
that
do
next
whatever
year.
they want to do with, I don't care.
Do that next year.
Okay, so we give them until the end of the calendar year to get the subsurface structures
Well,
properly.
let's not even put a date on it, just say the hot top season, you gotta get it done, they're gonna
Okay.
move on it. And if it ends in October, it ends in October, if it ends in December, it ends in December. But they've gotta move on it, because otherwise, I don't get the impression they're anxious about doing anything over there.
And then I guess the final part is, given the history of this, we need to put some teeth into this too, so they just don't go past that deadline and nothing happens. So that's where I guess I would look at some type of penalty to be assessed on a daily basis if, for failure to get the structures abandoned
Yep.
by that time.
When we correspond with that site, do we correspond with all the unit owners or just the property management company or just the
It's been a
the
little.
two trustees,
a
which
little
is now one
confusing.
trustee?
So at first, it went out, to the trustees and Holden Properties. Then they hired the lawyer, so then it started going to the lawyer. And then they haven't been communicating with the lawyer, so I've only been communicating with Holden Properties. In the midst of it, I did send something to all the property owners, at least to say, and we do know they had a meeting on, 22nd or
Supposedly it was the meeting
July, so-
the Monday after we had
Right.
our,
Yeah.
given the,
So they definitely know about it. It's not that they don't know, but I do hear what you hear, that there's no communication with their property management, but that's not.
So we're going to continue notifying the,
I will
Unit
notify,
owners.
of this, I will notify
okay,
everyone,
good.
I think.
I think you're going above and beyond what
I
we
think we- yeah.
expect you to be doing.
I
at
think
this
we
point.
should. Just-
And we have been all throughout this whole process.
Yeah.
We've been trying. I mean, when a deadline comes up, I contact them. Hey, did you know they haven't been able to get into all the units? And she didn't know that. So I gave her the list of the units they hadn't got in. There's been no one on top of their side of the project at all.
Is there only one trustee now?
is it a management company or is it virtual?
We have to,
I heard one of the trustees had stepped down, and then one of those new owners had offered to be a second trustee. I'm not sure if he did or not.
yeah, we got to contact all the unit owners. They don't, it doesn't seem like things are getting communicated over there on a good day.
Okay, so I guess we're ready to, let me just read a couple of findings of fact. Most of it, really, I'm just going to refer to, majority of the findings of fact are in the original letter dated May 17th, 2019, from the Health Department to Holden Property Management with the order letter stating that they have 120 days to bring the property into compliance with state code from receipt of the letter. And then, as the close of business on today, September 19, 2019, the requirements needed to secure sewer permit have not yet been satisfied. The change of use has brought the existing septic system into noncompliance. The current use exceeds the original design flow. The trustees of Cottage Place agree to comply with the board's order as per a letter dated July 17, 2017, from McGrill and Greery to the Health Department.
Raymond, there's also industrial contaminants entering.
Oh,
The
yes, it's
site.
not
Yeah.
just exceeded flow, you're right.
Right, not
There's-
exceed
there are
flow, but there are
two-
also
Two identified
two identifiable businesses
shouldn't
that
be
are,
there at all, yeah. Shouldn't be,
Have contributed to
Yeah.
the,
that are prohibited.
yeah, prohibited from discharging into the
Expressly
septic
prohibited.
based on their line of business being dental office and the hairdresser. So as a result of those finding of facts, and knowing that the permit is just within easy grasp for it to be issued, in fairness to the tenants there, we'd like to extend the 120 days by 7-day period so that the town sewer system must be completed by Friday, September 27th, 2019.
So would someone want to put that in
I will,
a motion?
I will reluctantly make the motion that we extend it to next Friday. And at which time, if they're not in compliance with the connection at that time, that we're going to cap that sewer. And they're going to be required to pump it however often they need to. Does that sound like a?
And then the question would be, at what, they cap it on Monday, or?
it's a long weekend. Monday's going to be a holiday, so.
I mean,
You'll have to sit in the,
Almost, Bob.
almost.
almost, you're out, you're out. Sorry. Go ahead.
Monday's a holiday, so I would say by Friday. I second it.
Monday's a holiday?
Not this Monday,
The
the following
30th?
Monday, but after the 27th, isn't it?
30th is
Or
not the
30th?
holiday, no.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's soon after, though.
Okay, then.
Yep. So the 30th?
Yeah, so do we say by like noontime the 30th? I mean, because if they know that they're not going to be able to make the Friday date, then it should not take them that long to engage someone to put a plug.
I don't think so. Not
The
from
plug is
research.
easy. The plug is a no-brainer.
Well, and if they do not do that, I
Yeah,
can
Monday the
request
30th.
cutting off their water.
Well, maybe the better thing is, by the end of Friday, if they don't have the sewer in, then they have to cap it by the end of the day.
Yeah. Because
And
the
it's-
30th is, we're going into another month, and I think that that's been more than generous and been fair. And normally, I'd have no problems working with people that are willing to cooperate, but I feel like we've got no cooperation, just a lot of lip service, and for one, I'm frustrated.
Okay, so your motion,
So the motion, I get,
extend to, yeah, and then,
yes, the motion will extend the date that tie into town sewer must be completed by Friday, September 27th.
yeah,
Failure to do so means they need to cap the outlet by the end of that Friday, September 27th, and pump out the tank immediately.
well, they would need to do.
How often do you think do we have any idea how often that tank would be filled? What is it,
The
3,000?
primary users are the beauty salon and the dentist.
So it depends
I
how
mean,
much use they have. I
How
mean,
much they
you know,
do.
could be 800 gallons a day, could be 1,000 gallons a day. You don't, it depends on what they use. So it could be every 3 days.
Yeah, depends.
Is there any way just to make sure, I hate to say it, but call me somewhat skeptical, is there any way to monitor that the tank is being pumped out properly, so there is no overflow when it's capped? Can it be,
I think if they hire a reputable pumper there, and their job is to watch it. So
If
they-
it comes up and over, we could turn the water off to the
Yeah.
facility. Just turn the water off, and that's
okay,
it.
just want to have a
And
remedy.
we don't, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
And then in talking with you, the other thing we'd want to make sure as part of this is that representative both from DPW as well as the Health Department are on site present to observe the installation of the cap, so we know it's done.
Would we assume Mr. Bradley is doing that, or would be, since he's the contractor of record, I guess, that he would be the one that would furnish that service?
yeah, because they have this problem with communications.
Yeah.
How does he get the approval to actually access it? There's that.
I'll call him.
I wish, no, I'm just saying, if they were here, they would say, oh,
Yeah.
no problem, we'll give access, but I will obviously call the management company directly tomorrow too, as well as get this out.
And then the other part we had was that they then need to properly decommission the 5 existing subsurface structures before paving season has ended for the year.
Well, again, that assumes we're going to require them to cosmetically take care of the place. We shouldn't care about doing anything, as I rethought what we were talking about. We shouldn't care if they cosmetically do anything, we just want those things filled.
Yeah.
So we can set a date on when we want those things abandoned,
So before what date?
well, before the first of the year, or
Okay.
however you want to do it.
Before December 31st?
Yeah, as far as the hot top goes and the paving, if there's issues with safety or walkways, that's not our problem. That's their insurance company's problem.
7th. Properly decommissioned, so is that the motion, December 31st?
Yeah.
You
Since we're
for
talking,
abandonment?
there's 20. And is there a penalty or something after that, or what happens if they didn't do it? Do we not discuss that now?
No, I think just that there would be
Why don't we think about what the penalty might be?
Okay,
Yeah,
We
we've
have
got
to
time.
check, yeah, well, we have to check with the, other divisions, because I could see that if it isn't followed through, it could have impact on the entire facility, or maybe some other divisions. I'm not sure if there'd be issues with building or building department or whatever, but.
Well, if there's ever a time I need to sign a building permit, I can certainly say they're not in compliance,
Yeah.
so I won't sign it. So if I'm asked to sign a building permit, I wouldn't sign it
She actually signs those permits now.
if they, but I would actually probably tell building department to include me in all the signings, make sure it's not just the ones they think I'm supposed to sign.
Okay, well, I think that should be complete enough. So, motion's been put forward in a very
So extending
long-winded
it to
fashion.
Friday, 9/27. If not, they will be required to install the plug and cap by end of day
End of
Friday.
day.
End of day Friday. DPW and health must be on the site to observe, and then they have time to properly decommission the remainder structures before December 31st, 2019.
Okay, someone willing to second that motion?
I'm willing to second it.
Okay, motion's been put forth and seconded. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
I,
Chair votes aye as well. Motion carries unanimously, 3-0. Okay. Okay,
Thank
now you
you.
can kill it, Mr. Scrono. Oh, thank you.
Oh, he left. the-
Lawyer courtesy.
he's probably left.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're not done yet?
Good evening. Good evening. Bob. Okay. On to new business. We have two items. First, tonight, we have Matthew Ernwine?
Yeah, good luck. You did well.
Okay, Irwine, okay. Body art apprentice for Lucid Arts Tattoo, 361 Main Street, to meet the board. So if you'd like to come up to the table, and there is a sign-in sheet there if you want to put your name and address on it, and then state the same information into the microphone clearly.
Yeah, sure. It's Matt Ernewine, 20 Martha Avenue, Tewksbury, Massachusetts. And I guess the reason for attending is applied for a apprentice license for body arts.
Yeah, and again, this is more just as a formality, because for the time being, the board would just like to get a chance to meet apprentice and practitioner applicants and
Sure.
just let you know that we are serious about keeping the regulations enforced.
Good.
And at times, we also like to have our resident expert in the board do a quick query.
Okay.
And as for
Yes.
the application, it was complete. Sarah, our public health nurse, has reviewed medical information. So I have no problem with the issuance of the intern permit.
I have no problems with it. Do you feel 100% comfortable with the exposure plan for Lucid Arts, sir?
I do. I've read it over. Obviously got vaccinated, because that's a good thing to do. And I think Nate's got his act together pretty well in terms of exposure and the plan, and I feel comfortable with it.
You wrote a very nice email about things that you see for the future of the store as well, as far as processes and things like that. I did share that with the board. I don't know if you had any comments that you wanted to share on record, or share as
Yeah,
far as?
Sure. I mean, I started out as, in my youth as an artist, and it wasn't very profitable. I kind of realized that I'd never be able to raise a family, so I got into engineering. So I'm a process person. I met Nate along the way, and, I expressed an interest in becoming a tattoo artist, and that I'd always been interested in. I said, well, maybe I'm a little bit old And we kind of worked out a bit of a deal where, I help him with his processes and lend some of my management experience in terms of dealing with artists, and, he teaches me the trade. So, also, I thought that, everything in the process that the Board of Health presented me was fair. I think that I feel good about the fact that you guys are maintaining a standard. And, it kind of honestly made me proud to be in the town that, you guys had fixed things that had to be completed in order to, even get an apprentice's license. So that's what I would share.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And just a couple of things to share from the board side. If Nate hasn't mentioned, we are in the process of updating most, if not all, of our regulations, because a lot of them are very outdated and don't necessarily represent what's happening today. And the body arts is one of those. So we've been looking at updating it. So it really, to your point, it sort of brings the issuance of an apprentice or practitioner license to a much higher status level than what it's had before. But as part of that, too, we're also trying to ensure that we have folks that are really properly well-versed in antiseptic techniques, practice, or ensure that the health of the client is maintained at all times, and I guess really to elevate things. So in order for us to get regulations updated, we also will form working groups. So we will be putting a working group meeting together, and when we'll do that, then the director will be in touch with both tattoo shops in town, just to let them know, because we encourage folks to come in and just meet with us, because we don't want to do it blindly. And we'd sort of like to come to some idea of what would work best and what our concerns and how we think they'd be best addressed. So we definitely welcome your input to that point when we get there.
That'd be great. I'd be happy to help however I can.
And I think that, as we said before, this was kind of a situation that was thrust on boards of health in general. Unfortunately, body art, they never put together their own standards that many groups will do and develop it. And so, which I think is a little bit disappointing, because it allows a lot of interpretation. And as we as a board, we just want the best for the community. We are aware that a lot of people want to avail themselves of that service, and that's fine. But we are aware of the pitfalls and the potential harm that can impact public health. So that's why we have these standards, and it takes time to do it, and we welcome any input that people can. Nathan has been helpful. One of the other people that originally got a license, they've been helpful to agree, but we need to do this because we just want well-qualified people to be providing the services that are desired, and to make sure that our community is as safe as you can make it. So we thank you for any input you've given so far, and as far as I'm concerned, the credentials that you put forward in working with an established licensee that we have now, I'm okay with that, and I wish you a lot of luck.
I appreciate it. I would say that one thing that, as a Board of Health, that you guys should look at is the safety of the ink. We've noticed, I've been working with Nate around looking at EU regulations and the CPT sheets specifically that have, the chemistry of the ink. The artists don't seem to be as versed in the chemistry of the ink as, they could be.
Well, we're aware of the qualities of that, and believe it or not, that was one of the things that we were going to discuss. Unfortunately, we've been thrust into a situation where it's rapidly taking hold, and we found that there maybe are a lot of people that actually they don't know what they don't know, and we've been forced to look into that. So no, thank you. It's something that I know I'm aware of, and it's one of those things that people don't realize. There's different qualities, different compositions. So and sometimes in the interest of saving money, people will get something cheaper. Cheaper isn't always better, but in this case, it can have health ramifications in the long term. So, but no, thank you, and any input that you can put to the give to the board will be helpful in that regard too, because I think that in time we'll be able to address all these issues, but there's a lot of stuff, as I said. And I think that people in the body arts field have to acknowledge that they didn't take it upon themselves to establish these criteria. We found out there've been little cottage industries of people saying this and saying that they have, and they would consider experts, even training. I mean, we've had some people even consider, training been virtual. Okay, so it's at this stage of the game, we just want what's best. So any input that you can provide to that with the Yanks, because it will just help make our final regulations be more appropriate and be fair to everybody.
Well, best of luck.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Lisa, admin shall be processing your application tomorrow and sending out the permit to you and then we should talk about in 6 months, whether you want to continue or as an intern or apply for a practitioner, what the minimums
Awesome,
to get to that point. Okay?
I appreciate it, thank you.
Good luck.
Okay.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good luck. Okay, moving on, other item under new business, grease tank installation. So,
I'm handing out to you right now, well, if you get both pieces of paper, hopefully we can get this here. So one is a list of the installations that have occurred over the last, or applications and/or installations occurred over the last year and a half or so. And the other is this letter, this is all the establishments listed alphabetical on the street, not by the name, that we consider high generators that currently have grease tanks or are in process of or in need of. So the ones that I've highlighted in pink are the 6 establishments that I had a letter delivered to this past week, requesting them to attend tonight, just so that we can discuss where they are in the process. As it's September of 2019, this 5-year period of grease tank installations really ended in March, but the board extended it until the end of the year of 2019. And I think it's really important that we just see this process through. I didn't want any surprises, because some have had some surprises, and that's probably what they're going to tell you, and why this is taking them longer than may have been anticipated. But I know that it's important to the board that this is the deadline for this regulation, this very long 5 years of regulation. So there are a few people here today, but I just thought you might want to see these, where we are so far with the installations of the other places.
and one thing I'd just like to add, Mr. Rook, because you were
Yes.
on the board before I was here. I think the importance of this regulation and the timeliness was that this was prepared right after the town went through a massive project to install new sewers in the town. And one of the goals of this regulation was to ensure that the insides of the sewer pipes could remain as clean as possible, and were fog, fats, oils, and greases that are discharged down the drain, if not properly settled out in a grease tank, will go into the sewer and cause endless repairs downstream of where it has been. And then it also enters into, compliance issues with the Lowell Wastewater Treatment Authority, because we were, I think in that agreement, we had to keep the level of fog down to a certain limit.
That's correct.
I understood there were also at least a handful of bad blockages and they were attributed to
That's
food
correct
establishments
also.
that also led to this direct, because many people will say, well, of course, residents also contribute. But they'll say, why can't you make a residence? Well, we can only do what we can do, and this directly, you worked with engineering and everyone trying to find out something that would have an effect. And I think this will have an effect. We do have 46 pump stations in town, and Greece really affects those as well.
And this is basically mandated by low wastewater anyway. It's something that we have to do. You can't be sending fogs down the drain and causing issues, for residents. It could be a mile away before the thing causes a problem, but, yeah. The sewer, municipal sewer means we've got to do things a little different.
So I did this because I want those that are in attendance, I know those be watching, that it's not just our personal wishes that we keep
No.
the sewers as clean as possible, but there are actually ongoing agreements that we need to make sure the town is able to adhere to and help minimize the impact to taxpayers for having paid for a new sewer system to then have to pay for repairs or cleanups of blockages caused by fats, oils, and greases. So with that, we come here tonight.
And actually, there's no real specific order. They're not even in alphabetical order, but I have an order, so I'll just might as well. Is anyone here representing Trollbrook? Yeah. Okay.
So anyone that comes up tonight, if you knew our meetings, we just need you to sign in your name and address on the sign-in sheet and then state the same into the microphone for the record, please.
It's Roy Troll, representing Trollbrook Golf Course, 170 River Road.
Okay. Good evening.
So as in the notes that we have, as of 8/23/19, I had emailed you about this meeting. The exterior tank plan was approved on 8/2. Is originally submitted in July. So it has been, as far as I know, that's my most recent update, if you'd like to tell us where we're at. Is that factual?
I'm working with a contractor who's, actively working on getting the, bid for this job. And as soon as we get that, then
Okay.
I've met with him on site. Actually, today he was there with a plumber to, look through the kitchen and see what work would be needed in the kitchen itself.
Are they currently licensed with the local Board of Health?
They're not.
Okay, so they just need to apply and
Yeah,
provide
they
us
have been in the
references?
past.
I'm sorry?
They have been in the past.
Oh, okay.
They just didn't renew it this year, I guess.
It's often, it's not a difficult process, just
Right, right.
references and things.
And this is why we're doing this tonight, to try to head off any potential issues, because we'd like to make sure that everyone is in compliance by the end of the year.
Yeah, I started this process in February. I just had one question. The contractor couldn't answer it for me the other day when I met him on site. The initial plan that I had was a 2-tank system, and now the approved plan is a 3-tank system. He meant it might be for a cooling process through the tanks.
It was your engineer's design. No one required them to do that.
So it's not a requirement to have 3 tanks?
No, I remember when I did the review, the number of gallons per day, I had told them that it would, you wanted to have 200 seats? No.
Yes,
200
200
seats.
seats.
And it was actually sized smaller. So I said, well, you can have this, it's approvable, but it's for like 180, because they used the wrong inaccurate calculation. So he checked with you and said, no, he wants it to be larger. So this was his choice to how he did it, if he wanted different size tanks, but so it's
Yeah, well,
55, is it
that's-
5,500 altogether?
I think it was 5,500 altogether, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's the engineer's choice to do that,
Yeah,
as
because,
far as I know.
as far as installation goes, it would be cheaper to set 2 tanks rather than setting 3 tanks. It was just a matter of getting gallonage that was required.
Yeah, no, you can talk to your engineer. I mean, he's
Okay.
changed it before,
Yeah,
so if he
yeah.
needs to change it again, he can.
And plus,
I
it
get big tanks.
takes up less space through the parking lot also.
Yeah, we're trying to make sure that we as a board do not actually specify the specific type or brand of tank, because that's really going to be site-specific and a whole bunch of factors that we
Yeah,
can't
well,
control.
I don't have any knowledge of how these systems work. And so I asked him, and he said he thought it might be a cooling process to capture more grease as they move through the tanks.
And that may be his,
That's something that.
They have multi-compartment tanks also that do the same thing, one tank with compartments within the tank. So there are other options.
most of them I've seen two recently, but yeah, I mean, maybe he just had the two and then said, oh, we want more, and he just added three rather
He's-
than changing the
it was
size.
I'm in
He's
Provost.
designing them, doesn't
I
he
didn't
know
ask.
what it's for?
No,
no.
some of the folks that design these aren't just out of school. They've been, like I just mentioned the guy's name, if it was Armin, there would definitely be 3 tanks in the ground where you could probably put 2, but I don't know who did
Yeah.
And it
it.
could be elevation issues, it
Yep.
could be anything, you don't know.
Parking
So really, it's
space,
up
yeah.
to them, yeah.
Ledge or whatever, you may have
Yeah,
ledge
so I
tanks in
think
there.
Once we,
Correct.
we have to, do some test digging in there to get the elevations of the pipes and that, and then we'll, determine a lot of that also.
Yeah, if he wants to submit a revised plan,
Yeah,
we can certainly
we
do
may
that.
be doing that, yeah.
And since you mentioned cooling, and just to help educate anyone that may be watching, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, since you're in this line of business, Mr. Rue, that the whole idea or theory behind the cooling is that the fogs will solidify better and faster in cooler water than hot water when they're first discharged, so that would aid in the separation of fog from the rest of the discharge, correct?
That's correct, as well as the baffle systems in those tanks. They have the outlet baffle is a foot off the floor of the tank, and the inlet's half the volume of the inside, so it comes in, creates a calming effect, the sludge goes to the bottom, and as it cools going through the component, the grease will float and the water sinks, and then the way that the outlet design is that the water theoretically comes up under it and the grease stays in that component. The cooler, the better. The more grease it will retain. That's what I had problems understanding how the Shire product works, but I still have a problem, and that's me. But-
Technology.
but I understand tanks. Yes, cooling, the cooling aspect of the tank with the baffle or the T's keeps the grease in the component and stops it from moving downstream and causing problems with low wastewater and our own sewer lines.
So basically, the intention is to comply by the end of the year. is what
Yes.
you're saying. So that's the board just,
How is the plumbing inspection going with the town? Are you all set inside?
That wasn't the plumbing inspection, that was the plumber.
Okay.
Coming to look to see, it's not a complicated setup, it's pretty simple, but I think one sink needs to be separated and not go through the grease trap, it'll stay on the sewer because it's a hand washing sink. And so I guess you don't want anything extra going through the grease trap that doesn't need to be on it.
the process starts when the application goes in for the sewer permit, and that's when we all get notified, and that's when the plumbing inspector will come out. This is kind of unique. They are putting a much larger system because they have future plans. So
Yeah,
this will
don't
be,
have to do
this
this
won't just
again,
be,
so,
this
yeah.
won't just be this, but who knows when, but you're planning ahead, so we're happy with that. Well, thank you. It's good that you understand where the board is coming from, and I think, do you have any other thoughts for him?
No? No, good luck in getting that done.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight.
See you later.
So is from Capolini's here? Anyone here? No? Okay. French's, Mr. David? Really was random.
Is that David French? It is. Recognize.
David French, 825 Main Street,
Right.
French's.
Thank you for coming tonight. So I also had included, I've had communications with Mr. French as well as the property owner. You may not know that that property was sold over a year ago now. We had some, was it a year or just about a year?
Almost, it'll be
Yeah.
November.
Yeah. And so there were plans to tie-in already approved, and there was also grease tank plans to be installed. In conversation with the owner and Mr. French, the intention at that moment didn't include that building staying very long, so it was agreed with us, with myself and the owner and Mr. French, that we would have the connection of the sewer to the building. So that is complete. However, since that structure was going to change, out of thought of let's not waste time and money to put in tank that would be unneeded or end up being crushed or moved, that I allowed time for them to effect that. That was going to happen last year, last November-ish around. And I gave them until March to pick one. You know, if you really aren't going to move forward with the change in the building, then go ahead and install the tank. So March came, we did not, it did not get installed. And then around that time, the board also provided extension time through the end of this year. So at that time, I did an inspection, Shannon and I did an inspection of the interior of the property. And because we had kind of assumed the property was not going to be there very long, so we were holding off on some structural infrastructure inside that needed to be done as well. So we held off on the tanks, we held off on the inside. So at that time, I wrote an order, and we made an agreement basically through April and May. We anticipated going and making an agreement on repairs on the inside and getting a plan, and then going forward with it. So the tanks, in essence, are not really that difficult. If it's approved, I know the contractor said he could put them in if needed, whenever it needed to be done. But we also wanted the inside to finally come up to code, because it appeared that it wasn't going to happen. Since May, Mr. French and I haven't had really any conversation. We met about a preliminary plan, and then since then, we haven't talked at all, so directly. So that's where we're at right now. So you can tell me what's going on now with the property and
He
compliance?
mailed it, he's not gonna do anything, so, you know, he's not gonna do any work at all.
So are you not applying for repairs of the inside now, as you indicated, or?
We're gonna finish and be done at the end of the year, as far as, whenever you tell me I'm done.
Oh, okay, I didn't know it was coming to that point. I mean,
Well, he's not gonna do anything, by the end of the year, we're done anyways, because of the.
So
the
he-
grease
so-
trap.
so the agreement was-
He's chose to not do anything at all.
Oh,
He basically just said that, when I gave him rent this month, said, I'm not doing any work to this property. That's the end of it.
it had kind of been an agreement, sort of like he was gonna do the tank part, and then.
It was getting done before the sale, and then the
Yeah.
sale came, so that,
Yeah.
you know, the assumption was, and John had met with you as well.
Yes,
and
he did.
said he's gonna do whatever he has to do,
Yeah,
and nothing happened out of it. So, you know, it is that situation. And,
So once the restaurant's closed, then that's it?
his intent is to tear it down anyways. I mean, you know, obviously, it's not, he needs a bulldozer anyways, but,
right. So initially, I had said, you know, if it wasn't done by March, that it was gonna be closed. I mean, I actually put that in writing.
Yeah.
And then we had given, you know, the extension time. But they had agreed, I have the document that, you know, by April, we'd have a narrative describing, you know, what was gonna be happening, then we'd have a plan, a floor plan showing the changes, surface finishes, you know, walls, floors. This was from the inspection back in March, and this was the inspection, actually. So I'm not sure what the board wants to do with this new information as far as, at this point, it's already September.
So just to be clear, so come the end of the year, or when the current food permit expires, you're planning on closing a business at that address?
right.
Okay.
So once the business closes at that address, it's no longer a food establishment, and they would have to go through the whole process all over again unless they have a change of use for the, if there's no
So I
longer
guess
food
the question is
establishment.
whether any of this would need to be done prior to. There were more structural issues. It wasn't, if you look through it, it wasn't food handling problems. It was structural, floors, walls, ceilings. Since David took over, I mean, it's more manageable. You know, he cleaned out a lot of things that were there before that kind of stopped them from keeping it clean. So the cleanliness was not the issue per se on a daily basis, but structurally, it just wasn't washable. If you look at the floors aren't, you know,
It's a
are
lot
like
of
this
years.
and
It's
the
been a restaurant
walls.
for 40 years, 50 years, you know
So-
what I mean? So it's a lot of
So-
years.
So I think
It
as long
needs
as.
a
Things
lot of
change,
work, so-
times change, things get updated. So
Absolutely.
basically, I think the dilemma that we have right now is this was all made aware of. So we as a
It was
board, I
agreed.
guess, have to decide whether we want to let it go to the end of the year or make a decision from a time.
That was the,
Do we have any recommendations, Director?
Well, what it seems like is that as long as you can provide a letter to the department that as of December 31st or whenever your lease is up, that operations will cease to be ongoing there and that you will not be renewing that food permit, then I guess it's sort of a moot point for us because no point in making you go through the expenditure for between now and the end of the year to put something in that's.
that's how I felt last year, you know, because that's
Yeah.
what I thought was going to happen.
But I think if
And
we
then he
get the
didn't
letter,
move on it. He
and
didn't
that's,
move on it.
and that's all contingent upon,
Seems like another lack of communication for where the board has tried to be reasonable.
Yeah, I mean,
Me.
yeah, I met with them, I really tried to, you know, find out what the new owner wanted to do and come
No,
up with
it's
some
just,
kind of an agreement, but unfortunately, I didn't know it had broken down, the agreement,
Well,
so.
yeah, you just told me we paid rent, you know?
well, I think this is a good, I think this is a good learning for the board and also for any other people that decide to purchase property and basically not inform what's going on for us. So I think it'll be a little bit more of an issue down the road, personally.
Well, I think it's similar to what you said earlier, is that we really do try to
No, we
work
tried.
with people. I mean, I think not putting in the grease tank was a good idea at that time. I'm still trying
Sure,
to
I'm-
defend that, even though it,
It just
some
it
people
just
might
makes you
say it
feel,
wasn't the right thing.
yeah, I think it makes you feel like you've been taken advantage of as trying to, in the good nature of things. And it's not, you don't own the building,
I
so
don't
it's
take it
not
that
even an
way,
issue.
yeah. I don't
Yeah.
take it that way.
No,
I
you don't own the
understand what you're
building
saying,
anymore.
and
Yeah, you
quite
don't own the
honestly,
building.
Well, I was, you know, I feel like I was misled as well. So
Sure.
It's difficult to, you know, this is what we do, you know what I mean? We gotta do it right, and that's the end of the story.
and please take this as not, your being here as the board's finding any fault with you
Appreciate you
because
I don't
coming.
take it that way.
it's, and the other part of it we've also learned in this process is that we need to find a way to get the property owner more involved with these decisions because you as a tenant pay for it, that's a leasehold improvement. You head out somewhere else, they now own the responsibility of maintaining it, so they should have a vested interest in the process.
It's a unique situation. It was agreed from
Yeah.
the beginning, and we talked about it until we were blue in the face. It just never happened.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not paying for it if he's just gonna tear it down.
Right. So out of my own curiosity, is this the end of French's as we know it? Or are you looking at going somewhere
Well,
else? Or?
he's pursuing rebuilding it. If that's the situation, then we go back when it's done, you know? I'm not paying $4,000 a month to spend another 40 on top of it. You know?
Right.
You know, it doesn't make sense to me, so.
No, I mean, you planning on moving somewhere else in town, setting up shop, or is this really the
I
it for a
don't know
while?
what I'm gonna do.
A moratorium, more like a
I can
moratorium.
work. I know how to cook.
Yes.
I'm not worried about it.
Well, you also do,
Yeah, I'm at Long
Service
Meadow,
at
do other
Long-
food service at Long
Yeah.
Meadow.
they're at Long Meadows as well.
So do I have to put my Thanksgiving order in now, or can I wait another week?
I don't know, see what happens.
Yeah.
Little finger sandwiches.
Yeah,
Is there a written lease between landlord and tenant?
No. Month to month. You know, you nailed it.
Yeah.
You knew exactly what's going on. I believe them.
You what?
I believe them,
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Looks
that's
like we did too.
Sure, well, I don't believe in wasting money when good things are gonna happen and someone's in.
Well, he's gonna tear
so-
it down, I mean, that's
It's just
what's gonna happen,
time-wise,
it's
yeah.
just, timing is what it is.
I would like to see you come to the surface again somewhere on Main Street, though.
No, we will.
Yeah,
I'm not-
okay, that's all I want to know. They will.
Been there
That's what,
forever. Just, you know,
you can't go anywhere now. No, that's it.
Anybody else will take it.
You must stay.
Well, sorry for delivering the sad news to us, but we wish you luck and
Yes, good luck.
look to seeing French's 2 sometime down the road.
Yeah. Fun.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Here, there.
Kyoto? So, if yeah, you sign in, thank you.
So put that door.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay. Yes. okay. So we all know Kyoto Restaurant. They actually have installed the tanks. They are there. Last November, but the actual final pipe is not hooked inside because they want to renovate their kitchen. So the idea was to hold off to a point where they could have a time, like in that summertime, where they're work, not that you're quiet, no, probably not quiet now, to do that,
We renovation, I submit the renovation plan is February.
February. And as we know, there are different things in what happened, and what happens is
They
now,
ask for the emergency door.
can you,
first.
can you speak into there? They asked for what?
They ask, first thing, in February, they ask for the emergency door exit.
Emergency doors, okay.
Yeah, cut through the whatever building.
Mhm.
Then we do it, finally, they agree for the location. They get the, not kindness, handwriting, say, okay, we'll do it. And then suddenly we see the letter, they say, oh, wait a minute, you have to do the sprinkler. So, because of the building, so, oh, we don't have a sprinkler. Then we called another engineer, back and forth, another 2 months has passed. And they say, finally, okay, they whatever, how many hit. Then last week, I got a notified again. They say, oh, we need a fire hydrant. But I don't know, I just have no idea why they not tell us in the one time in February that we can do everything at the same time. Then-
Well, the fire hydrant is really part of the upgrades on Main Street, so, not sure why the request was made, but certainly they're upgrading all of the fire hydrants and all of the water connections.
Well, he's installing one, I think. You don't have, there's not one there right now, right?
They don't have one right now.
No,
We're
they-
going to, today. we
On
have-
your property?
Yeah,
Yep, because they require for 100 feet from the building.
Sure.
The closer one is 185 feet. But we don't mind to do whatever we need.
oh no,
to-
that'll lower your insurance costs.
So we can do it like, now we just are kind of running out of the time. But I don't know when they can get a permit, they ask to tie in.
Have you resolved the, part of your plan was a bump out in the back? Has that been approved? Is that okay to do
Yeah,
that? That's
one-
for the walk-in refrigeration unit they want to put back there? Is that going to also have to go to any
They-
board?
They don't say yet.
No?
I don't know what.
Okay. I
they
was
say-
concerned about that, bumping out in the
That's
back.
why I don't know when we
Yeah.
can get it done, can get a permit to starting the job.
Well, the kitchen is old. It really does need,
20 years, 25
yeah.
years old.
needs
one-
renovating, and it doesn't
Updated
function
system.
right. You should, you kind of walk in, you gotta go around here and there.
Kind of small.
It's rough. So what I asked him to do, because this is just, again, this was my doing, saying, okay, well, put the tanks in, and when you're ready to do the upgrade, then you connect.
Sure.
So here we are, we're getting to the end, and they're not.
We
So I
say-
asked him just to show you, and if the decision is no matter what, I mean, he's still gonna, you're still trying to get it done this year.
But today we have the contractor doing the digging for the fire hydrant. Should be
Okay.
done this week. But I don't know any surprise will coming after that. But I don't know, question mark, so.
So he had the plumber just do an estimate as if, just say he said, I'm not renovating the kitchen, I'm just gonna tie it in. And this is what he just presented to me. So it just shows, so if the board, if he came to a point where, you know, you're, because this is your permit as January 1st, you want to stay open, so.
So before I pass this, so
Yeah.
this is more than just
This,
connecting into the tank. This is doing a lot of
well, it has to do,
plumbing.
all these plumbing has to be proper. You say you
Okay.
have to literally dig up all this and replumb properly in the flooring. So there's concrete cutting, there's everything else, and that's, if if all the sinks were gonna stay exactly the same place, I'd say, yeah, go right ahead and do it. But he's reconfiguring the kitchen so that the walk station is along the back, and, you know, the only thing really, maybe the 3-bay is probably staying in the
3-bay
same
stays.
place. But he thinks sinks are in different locations. What do you think the odds, well, I won't know. What are the odds? I don't know. I mean, they're hard and fast. If this wasn't done by the end of the year, I mean, that's how we've been. So this is why I wanted him to come before you and talk about it, just in case fate is not kind.
Is the line for your sprinkler system already to the
Already
building?
there, we've been down 3 times digging the parking lot, made the 6-inch pipe from the main. Then last year we cover it, now we digging again, now we cover it, now today we digging again, like 3 dig. So I don't know,
But the supply is to the building?
it's already in the building,
Okay.
everything in the building.
And your domestic supply, has that been replaced? Your actual water supply that you drink out of, have they replaced that line as well?
Yeah, 6-inch pipe, before only 2-inch, now it's already in the.
Now you have a total 8-inch, right?
No, 6.
6-inch, okay.
And
Yeah.
that tank is, those tanks, because the sewage comes out this way, so the tanks are in the back, so that's already done.
Already
Everything, all the
connected
plumbing the way it's
sewer.
supposed to be, they just need to bring the items out the back that should be, and then separate them from the rest of the sewage disposal. So this is where we are at, and that's why I asked them to.
Well, it definitely sounds like they were on the right track to get this all done, and unforeseen circumstances, which never happens in remodeling, crept up.
However, it's been 5 years, and I know how you
Yeah.
feel. This is, you know, this is why it was important to you, so.
Well, I don't see anything that would constitute a delay on their part. It seems like they've been diligently pursuing this. I don't know how much more that we can ask that people do diligently pursue the final outcome and to be connected, and I guess we will suspect that maybe there'll be further delays, but at least they're moving towards compliance.
Right, they have the correct intent.
I think
And they're making the
5
effort.
years was too long, because
Yeah.
then a lot of people didn't, do it until the 4th year or the 3.5 year. And so this like first 3 years, it
Well,
just didn't.
Yeah, you weren't referring to the last 2 months of the
Yeah,
5
no,
years.
yeah, right, you know.
The
Yeah.
60 months was really a
Yeah.
time frame to prepare
That's what I mean,
and get there.
yes.
We weren't expect people say, we're down to the last 2 of the 60 and here we are. Well, I don't think that's the
That's-
case here.
Oh, they've been thinking about it a long time,
Right,
because they
so-
wanted to do the whole thing.
Started
Yeah.
last May.
Right,
Last
so-
April.
Even before that.
Engineer to the plan and.
Yeah, it's been a long process.
So
Over
my
a year.
question for you is, if everything else
I said
goes
the same-
according to
I
plan,
was just gonna ask.
which is a very big hypothetical, have your contractors given you any assurance that this will be done by the end of the year, or are they nervous that it may not be?
They already ordered most part equipment in, I rent a huge storage in there, everything most in there, we just need a permit.
And you'll be closing for this time that you'll be doing the
Yes, we were
renovation. yes.
expecting for the holiday season to close, but now we have no choice.
It sounds like all the subsurface work is done.
They don't have to worry about outside.
They don't have to worry about outside, and it sounds like they're moving towards compliance.
Yep.
But I appreciate you doing that so the board would show, like, this is why I didn't want, to just make them do it, and then to have not to rip up that this would all just get ripped up.
Right, because, I mean, to me, that would constitute financial hardship and we won't say what the quote is, but
No, but if it had come in
if it was
at
something
$500
very
or-
minor, then we'd say, well, spend that little bit and do it, but that's not a,
That's exactly what I said to them. If it was $500, they'd tell you to do it.
I mean, that's probably at least one hibachi grill, if not two, so. In terms you can equate to, or we can
Yeah.
equate to, so it's not insignificant. So as we look at these things too, we also look at, is it going to constitute a financial hardship? And I think that quote would definitely say, yeah. So,
So just.
What action do we need to take to someone?
The only action is, I mean, if it were to go, I just think they need to know whether or not they'd get their food permit, if it were gonna go in excess of January 1st, because that's the big, there's no real action other than that's the one thing left to do. You
oh,
see
we
that?
actually didn't mention that
Yeah,
tonight.
yeah,
That, what we're looking at doing is that for anyone that does not have this completed by the end of the calendar year when food permit expires, that the food permit cannot be renewed until the work has been done, which is why we want to bring some of you folks in tonight to forewarn you about that and see, because everyone's going to have different circumstance and really get a good idea of what's happening. Even though the director is involved with you, it was to get the board members more aware of
yeah. It was the eye to eye.
what you're going through, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So I could, if you stay connected with me in the monthly basis, I'll inform them of I'll give them the updates. Would that be sufficient?
I think a status report on our meetings, on where they're going, is exactly what we should get.
There you go.
I think the board appreciates people being in communication with us because we do try to be very understanding and reasonable, so thank you for being in communication.
And I mean, if we know in December what's going on, we can take some action or diversion at that point. So I think
Right.
that's what we need to do. So a status report at that point, staying in touch, informing us would allow us to make an informed decision.
and hopefully you coming after hearing a couple other people where there were communication issues and what's happened, that you'll see why it helps to stay in touch. So we wish you the best of luck, and we keep our fingers crossed. No other unforeseen conditions are encountered, but
So they do not want you to go forward with that.
correct.
Okay? Just so you can, I won't,
But thank you for getting that price quote for us, because that made our decision a lot easier tonight, so thank you.
All right, have a good evening.
Good night.
thanks. Just
Good luck.
Good luck.
So Mr. Ross is here representing what we now call Woodhaven, which was Peregrine's. Unfortunately, places like Woodhaven change quite a bit, change over, these nursing homes. And this home, I think you probably have known it by maybe 4 names, probably, different ones.
Well, the industry certainly is in flux, so.
So what happened is, 5 years ago, when Peregrines came to this town, it actually is on the permit thing, right when this went into effect, you will need to tie in, you will need to install these tanks. Those people went right out those employees who knew that left. They didn't even pass that information on to anyone, it appears. So we would send out periodically, like annually, don't forget, it's only 4 more years, so you have to do the tanks, don't forget. Well, about a year ago, maybe, I said to the manager during an inspection, don't forget, you need to do your tanks. And he said, what? What tanks? They did not balk. They instantly started talking to people. They maybe didn't necessarily get the right advice right off, but Peregrines did not hesitate. Then I was contacted by Woodhaven, but they were moving forward, and they got the exterior tank, this back to Peregrines, they moved forward, they got the exterior tank approved, but hadn't addressed the interior items. Come along, Mr. Ross, and how to, plumb everything, because this kitchen's in the back, and the tanks are up front, and the person who did the tanks just did the exterior. Then I get a call that Woodhaven is buying this property.
This
So,
year?
which is Meridian. It was probably early in February or March, maybe?
Sometime this spring, I believe,
It's
yes.
in the spring, and I informed them directly and in writing. You have to put in these tanks before you before you get a permit from us. You will not get a permit from us until these tanks are installed. Communicated, multiple people. All of a sudden, I get an application for this company. Again, the same people I talked to, gone. The new people knew nothing about not being able to get their food permit until they did this. So now I have elderly, memory care. I can't stop the food there. I can't. So we've been working as diligently as possible to get this in as fast as possible. Unfortunately, Mr. Ross can explain, they've had some major hiccups, and so this is why they're here. That's why he's here, to represent them, to explain it. Go ahead.
And you never come before us with the easy ones, do you?
Never.
And unfortunately, they didn't hire him right off.
Yeah, so just taking a step back. So the client, prior to talking to me, engaged a designer who designed the exterior tank. And we did submit that in the spring for approval, partly for the extension that you did grant. So we have an exterior tank solution. However, they never looked at, as described earlier, they never looked at how it tied into the kitchen. And what happened was, when a contractor in town was asked to bid on it, he called me because he wasn't sure it was correct. And there were at least one bathroom. It turned out there were 3 bathrooms that would have flowed into the grease interceptor, and that just doesn't work. It immediately plugs a grease interceptor. It's not the way it's going to work. So we had to get involved to really map out the interior plumbing and figure out how to just take the kitchen flows and get those out of the building to the grease interceptor. So as part of that, we did a bunch of interior investigation. We did some test pits. We engaged a plumbing engineer, so now I have a plan for the interior work done by a mechanical engineer, plumbing engineer. So that piece of it has now been resolved. The final kick in the pants was that the sewer line exiting the building that we were trying to tie back into, according to the original design, was not, we didn't have as-built data for it. So when we found out that fact, partly through town engineer Hardeman wanted us to verify some stuff in the field, we were able to go out and verify that. It was higher than expected. So we had the civil engineer has communicated with the town engineer, kind of worked out how that was going to be solved. There was a potential to have to go out to the street. The current solution is still tying the system as designed into the sewer main coming out of the building, all on property, which is a big deal for paving reasons that Mr. Rood talked about earlier. So that just got resolved last week with town engineer's office. The civil engineer's finalizing those changes now, and I would expect within a week or two, we'll probably have final design plans. The contractor for the exterior work was on board in the spring. He's already priced all that work. He'll have to price the change, but that will be the only thing he needs to really do. And then that exterior component can get done first. This is really going to be a 2-phase project. The exterior has to be done first, and then the interior work will be all done, and the switchover will happen like that so that there's no downtime for the kitchen. Because this is a 24/7 kind of operation, right? It's 3 meals a day for all the residents. So the idea would be to have the exterior work in place and inspected and approved, and then go in and disturb the interior, get it already inspected and approved, and the only final thing will be to cut over into the pipe that's existing and change that flow into the grease interceptor from the kitchens. And we can do that kind of between shifts, between meals. So there'll be no food service interruption. The other key thing about figuring out this problem was we were able to find a location that was not within the kitchen. So as you know, I've been here before you on other projects where we've done all the work inside the kitchen, which we blow the kitchen up completely to replumb the entire kitchen. Part of what you probably saw on that last estimate is the impact of what you gotta do. Because everything in the kitchen has to be redirected. We were able to tie into the location, into those kitchen flows in a hallway, so there won't be any impact to like the hygiene and the food safety issues in the kitchen at all, really. So I think that's gonna minimize impact to the residents too. So I think we're almost there. I definitely should be able to get all the exterior work done this fall and hopefully all the interior work done as well. To address Mr. question earlier about paving, when it was on another matter, all of the work is on property. There will be some pavement disruption now, unlike the plan in the spring, because the sewer tie-in location is a little bit different.
Okay.
But that's all, again, private property, so we don't have any road opening permits. The town does shut down, does prevent you from cutting into the roadway after October 15th, which is fast approaching. But all ours will be off-site, off-roadway, so we should be able to get it all done. So we're looking pretty good. Yes, there's some hiccups, but I think we're past those now and we're pretty much ready to get it done. So if you have any questions.
I think this sounds like
This is
the
where we
last
are.
one where
It's been a longer road. It's, yeah.
right, and there have been unique challenges.
Yeah.
And as I was saying before, we have to handle each of these separately, and I'd say it's not due to lack of effort.
No, at Peregrine's they jumped right on it when they realized. And which I give them a lot of credit because they might have said, oh, I didn't know or anything, because these people didn't know. But we had sent out reminders, they just didn't get the hint. It meant them.
And to be more specific, Peregrine's actually used that engineer to get the exterior design done. It's transferred to Woodhaven. The Woodhaven folks have been great in pushing this forward too, so it's just trying to solve some technical problems, and I think we're
A lot
there.
of communication.
There is an as-built, though, for the interior plumbing, no.
I would have loved that, because we would have been done long ago. There was no as-built for the interior plumbing, which is not unusual.
No,
No. There was no as-built for the sewer line coming off the street. So there was a proposed plan, this is what we found out, this is the last hiccup. It was only a proposed plan for that sewer connection, and the as-built location on that was, elevation-wise, was off by 10 or 12 inches.
Yeah,
Actually 12 inches, and the effect though was a net 10-inch loss.
yeah.
So the pitch of the pipe coming out of the grease interceptors, and Mr. Ruwals will be happy to know this is still a concrete tank, coming out of that concrete tank was going to be too flat to go to the proposed location. So the alternative was maybe going all the way out to the street, which would have been a long distance, difficult. Turns out we were able to tie into an on-site manhole and keep the pitch the same. So it's a slight change, but luckily we figured
But
it all out.
workable.
Yeah.
When they put the tanks in, this is, it's probably a moot point now, but didn't they anticipate you can't get there from here when the the tanks were in, so I would think that you'd kind of figure out who's ever putting the tanks in, that they would have thought about, well, we got the external in, but you kind of got to know the pathway from internal.
So I got called in because of that exact question. So the
Yeah.
tanks have not yet been installed,
Okay.
right? I got called in because the contractor that was going to install those tanks had that question.
Okay, so they weren't, okay.
So we kind of,
Well, that's
it
good.
started on the interior stuff. We've solved that interior problem, which we thought was, at the time,
Yeah, I
was the
remember
real
you said
problem.
that.
Yeah.
And then when we were just about ready to go, actually, it was Town Engineer Hardeman that wanted us to verify the tie-in elevation.
Okay.
because
He was
that
so
is
tough.
critical.
Yeah.
He was tough, but he was right.
And he was
was
right on the money, and we were able to figure out how to get it done. And,
Well, it's good to figure it out now before more stuff was done.
Yeah,
As to his point, right? So I'm glad we did, and then we got they pitched a few ideas to the town as to how to solve that problem. The town has an agreement on that with us. So the pitch of the pipe coming out of that concrete tank going to the sewer is going to be flatter than the town normally allows. But as long as the owner agrees, and that there could be backups because of that, and that we are going to add some provisions for cleaning out that line to make it a little easier,
Yeah.
that they'll allow us to go forward. Because the alternative is a very expensive industrial pump system. And that's, you know, that's
You
a
make
whole nother
contingencies for cleaning it so it functions within the letter of the law and stuff,
Exactly.
okay?
Yeah, jet it, if you have to jet it once a year, you know, as a preventative measure. That
You
would-
put the cleanouts in there.
Kind of like putting oil in a car that leaks a
Yeah.
little bit, just fix it.
I mean, but that line is your line, that's not the town's line, so you own the responsibility of maintaining it. What was there before?
Well, there was no grease interceptors. There was a small grease trap on the 3-bay. I mean, you're familiar.
There's a little
That's all
one.
they used to do. It's like a small grease trap.
And there was
Just a
one,
100-pounder?
Wasn't even a 100-pounder.
there was no subsurface, anything.
No, there was a sewer. I mean, that's every restaurant in town, that prior to your rule, right? EPA created this rule that we're finally implementing here. So you only had a grease trap
Internal,
that was
yeah.
probably around 50 or 60 pounds, 60 pounds. The board's rule now is 100 pounds. So this spring, they would even had a grease trap in the kitchen that was less than 100.
And it failed too. It was
And it-
not doing well.
And it was
yeah.
failing. So, and we didn't, once we identified these problems, we knew that this wasn't gonna be a quick fix for the bigger system. They actually replaced that with 100-pound, with another tank. But our design makes that tank that they currently have, the new one in the kitchen, redundant. So, because that had only addressed the 3-bay sink, it didn't address the dishwasher, because they were never required to before, by the plumbing code. It didn't address the floor drains, because they were never required before to be connected. And it didn't address the dishwasher. So, so what we did instead is we designed, in the work that I was responsible for, a new 100-pound grease trap. Instead of locating it in the kitchen, we've put it outside. So our new line is going to actually tie in inside the hallway, come down a hallway, pop out into the exterior, and instead of that 100-pound tank like you typically see in a kitchen, this is going to be outside. And then it's going to come out of that 100-pound grease trap by code, go into the concrete tank for the grease interceptor, and then make its way out to the street. This particular facility, being different from the restaurants I've been before you on, is interesting because it's a locked facility. So going inside to service grease traps is a
Can't do
bit more complicated. You can't leave a door wide open while you have a hose running through, you know? So, it's talking about health problems, when you have people running around
A lot
that,
of people getting colds in their robes.
How you gonna keep
so-
that thing, how you gonna keep that thing from freezing out there? You're gonna have it, it's gonna be,
it's below grade, and,
oh, okay, all right.
so it's below
Have to
grade, concrete slab
Oh,
over it.
okay, when you're talking, I said, everything's high and nothing's low, we can't get there from here, put it outside, I'm going, Jesus.
So it's frost protected too, somehow, right?
It's under,
They
it's
have-
underground, yeah, so so it won't be a frost problem, because the pipe has to be below 3 feet anyway, coming out of the
That was a
building.
good challenge for
How do
you.
you service that thing? How do
Well,
you
that's
service-
the beautiful thing, is that tank now, in addition to the interceptor, are both outside, so the truck just backs right up in the parking lot, services both of them,
outside?
they don't have to go inside the building.
So the one inside's going to be removed or no?
I mean, technically, they could remove it, I think that the
Or
better.
disabled?
No, I think they'll just, I think the better.
So they're
option
still
would
going to
probably
have to
just keep
service it?
Yeah, they'll service it, but it's not gonna be one of the required ones, so,
Okay, I understand.
you know, it's just a belt and suspenders
Okay.
system. And it only services a 3-bay sink anyway, so.
So I guess we'll be
Thank
looking
you.
for status reports
Yes.
on
Yep.
this as well.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely, and we'll update the submission to the board. Now that the plan that we submitted in the spring was only exterior, now we have a new plan to add to it from the plumbing engineer. And I think we'll be all set, so. we'll
And it
be-
sounds like there's already a good ongoing communication channel between the two of you, so
We got to chat a lot because we just finished up the Luna Rosa installation. And that's
Before
the-
that, there was
that's the sheer one that-
Longs and Angelinas before that, so it's been a
Just
year
never get
for
those
us,
things
and it's not ended yet.
So while you're here, I do have a question aside from this, because at our July meeting, there had been a news story where a child had fallen into an exterior grease tank, because it, I guess, had a green plastic cover on it. So out of more my curiosity, do you know what the covers have been made of for the exterior grease tanks that you have seen installed?
They're H20 load, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
So they're huge.
Well, let's take a step back. There's a couple different options. So if the grease tank, for instance, at, it's 1866 Main Street, that's Longs and Angelina's, that was a concrete tank as well, located in a parking lot, so you get pavement over it. There's a riser, concrete riser up off the concrete tank, and then there's a regular manhole like you see in every street. A couple 100 pounds. I'll tell you, they're hard to get up. Those are cast iron manhole covers.
Okay.
Typically, that's what you're gonna see, certainly anything I design. The shear units have an H20 truck-loaded cover, but they're screwed down, so they can't come up. They're also gasketed.
Okay.
Because they're used inside, they need to be gasketed. But the outside, it's the same installation, so they're screwed down, even though they're plastic. I know what you're talking about, though, and I think Mr. Root has too. I've seen those in septic system design,
that's a lot
where
of
they use a plastic
private-
riser.
Yeah.
And I think they're extremely dangerous.
They are.
So I
Well,
don't think
extremely
that's-
dangerous if they're not put on the right application, if they're misapplied as well.
Right.
So people,
Right.
people are using those on applications that simply aren't required.
They're on septic tanks, and they have the
That's right.
self-tapping screws that go down, and the pumper comes to maintain that thing, and he unscrews it, and you never get the one back in there you're supposed to, and now there's 2 screws instead of 6, and
And after 3 trips, there's no screws.
And I actually haven't seen, I've only seen one of those.
I see them a lot in private septic, there's
Yeah.
a lot of them
That's
around.
in New
I've
Hampshire.
only seen one in a private septic, and I recommend to the owner that,
Yeah.
just dig it up and.
Most
contact
engineers I know don't inspect them.
If
but
I
there are
inspect
always
them,
somebody.
and they have a
Concrete.
plastic cover, I make them change it.
Yeah.
We put concrete on it, but
So
Well,
there's,
I feel better, so thank you for that explanation, because,
there's actually 2 ways you can do it. You can do the cast iron cover, or you can do a riser with a concrete
Concrete,
cover.
yeah.
That's more common.
Yeah.
That's what we spend
it's
time-
cheaper.
Thank you.
well,
very
thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
So I had a couple more on the list that couldn't come here tonight, but they've given me their explanations and where they're at. Capellini's is just last week received approval from Conservation Commission to install the exterior tanks in the tank in the parking lot. And don't know, I don't think I've received Kevin Hardeman's approval from that yet either. So we're still waiting for that. So I don't know when that's going to be done, but he has full intention of doing it this fall. And I've,
Can I go back one on that?
yes,
Capelini's, did they investigate that Shire product over there at Capelini's? They have no room to do anything, and it's like that
they
that seemed to
hired,
be
did
the way that
I
the,
bring it? Let me see if, I don't know if I brought it.
no, was it you?
No, it wasn't. He was too busy.
Wants to come back again.
Kidding. I forget, it was, not a, oh, here it is. And I told them about it. I
Okay,
told
all
them
right,
about
no,
options.
as long as that was.
They hired Dresser, Williams, and Way.
Yeah,
And they
from-
investigated options,
Yeah.
and you're welcome to look at it, if this is
No.
what they've come up with. The tank, and that's why they went through conservation, they had to do all that. And for some reason, it took the engineer a long time to get through conservation. I don't know how that happens, but it does. No, he just wasn't, I spoke to him in the spring, and he hadn't even applied until September.
Who was that, Steve? Steve Dresser?
Dresser, yes,
Yeah,
Steve.
that's not uncommon.
Okay, well, I don't know, Steve. So I impressed upon him the importance
Yep.
of the deadlines. So Vinny, I think, who's at Capellini's, he's aware that this is it. This is December 31st, and he just was unable to make it tonight, and he did put in writing that he would be doing that. Dandelions, I spoke to Mr. Lyons today. Dandelions was initially, they've been on septic, so in this calendar year, that septic is found to be in failure. So they need to tie in. This is an emergency in a way, but they're also in the just finishing their season. So they're going to, he agreed today in writing. He said that he's going forward. He understands he's going to change out. They had a grease tank exterior, but it's 1,000. It's likely not an H20. So rather than lots of conversation and all, he said, I will be tying in and putting in a 1,500, and he's already received bids for the plumbing work. He doesn't have a lot of internal plumbing work because apparently it meets whatever the minimums are that they needed, and he doesn't have a lot in there. It's a very small operation inside, but it's not cheap anyway. Still have to do the venting back and everything else, so he's aware that he will not reopen. He plans on doing it this fall. He wants to do it as soon as he gets the approvals. He has a contractor who said that they will start the process now that he's, getting to time to close.
You don't want to wait over
and
there until the spring, you'll
No.
never get it in the ground.
Yeah, so we're hoping, but we don't have anything to do with all those other problems that people have, and we're hoping that he won't have any issues with conservation or anything else, but we can't guarantee that. Once the process starts, they will
He's
have to
got
deal with that.
groundwater elevation issues there, though.
Right there, he's on a swamp.
But he won't, yeah. But being that if it's emergency to get it done, to get rid of that, then conservation generally calls it an emergency.
They're
approval,
going to use a
and
monolithic
They allow it.
Well,
H20 load.
that is
float.
an emergency.
It is. We
It's
need to
so,
get it.
I mean, he should be able to get a permit
Yeah.
through conservation
That's what we do with
fairly quickly.
any septic system that fails, it's going to be tying in.
30
If they
days.
happen to be there, we order them to do it, basically, and then they take our order and say, I can do an emergency
Yeah.
situation. So that one, I believe, is going forward. And Mirabella's has an actual date for their beginning of installation, which is the 30th of September. I've spoken to Cliff Construction. They verified that, but not in writing, but
Is the plan fixed,
I,
or is it still the tank and the
Yeah.
easement?
yeah, no, the plan, that, they had a person who drew plans, and then when the contractor went out to bid it, realized that couldn't go exactly where it is. If you've seen behind Mirabella's, you know there's no room.
2 feet.
So they've had to reconfigure them, so they're going to get that done too. But she's signed on with plumber and the contractor as well.
And while Paul's here, what about Lisa's Family Pizzeria?
So,
What do you think, you're going to just sit there?
why you hung around? So Lisa's Pizza received a variance in 2011, I believe, for a mechanical removal of fats, oils, and grease, and in parentheses, it was considered it basically stated as a Big Dipper. I ordered that to be ordered it to be inspected by a professional this year. It failed a few months ago, so now they're engaged Mr. Ross in opportunities of how to fix that situation. And that's where we're at. He hasn't proposed anything to me yet. I'm waiting for the proposal. He was unable, he's been a little busy. He was going to try and get to me in September, but I don't know what that proposal is yet, so I don't know where we're at with that.
Is this the last of the Big Dippers, or do we still have other Big Dippers in
I don't-
operation?
Not that I know of.
That's the last of the
Yeah,
Big
that's-
Dippers, as
Okay.
long as I'm sitting here.
Yeah.
They've been banned.
So this is
in
that one you've
Billerica.
been talking about before?
Yes,
Okay.
this is it's,
So
It's
the variance
just-
was given, to allow a mechanical, but anyway, I wasn't here then.
yep. That's when they
So
had
if
it.
you wanted to ask him what his proposal is, you're welcome to do so. I didn't.
Is there any update for us in this, or?
What do
is
you
it-
think about the Big Dipper?
Well, it's now approved again. Now it's back on the approved list.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
They're the
yeah.
new ones. They took it off the generally approved list for plumbing, and now it is back on the
Ah,
general.
jeez.
So Paul Ross for Lisa's Pizza, I guess, although I'm not officially here on his behalf, but I can give you an update. So yes, they do have a Big Dipper. They were having problems with it, and so they ended up having it cleaned monthly by a grease company that came in and cleaned it and serviced it monthly, which is just unbearable. The product doesn't really work that well, as Mr. Rue knows. Now, the reason it was delisted on the state-approved plumbing fixtures list was not really related to its grease extraction ability. It had to do something with venting and other issues. Big Dipper since supposedly fixed that and was relisted with the state. That said, my client is not interested in another Big Dipper.
Good.
They will be going with what we're proposing, a different automatic electric unit. And we'll get all that information to the board. And I know Charlie's.
What's wrong with your
Burn.
Shire? What's wrong with your Shire thing over there?
A lot of $100 bills, maybe a lot of $1,000 bills.
Those
but-
mechanical things are really, they're just, you can cheat with them. What do you call it? The auger they have in them, they're always following up. I don't care. They're always, in Billerica, they've banned them, the mechanical
In
grease
Andover
trap.
required.
Andover
I don't get it. It's
and
everywhere.
Andover
Everywhere's
allows them
different.
for
I
retrofit
don't know why.
situations.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I think you're right, that they've been a lot of problems with the Big Dipper model itself. We'll propose a different one, and I'll get all that information to you, and if it's helpful to the board, I can come in and explain it.
We
in
need to
more
have some
detail.
type of a service agreement with somebody that's gonna look at that thing.
I'd agree.
More than just when they're cleaning it. Those things are something.
So I agree, there should be a service agreement filed with the board. I think that's reasonable. And, the local person that sells those as well as services them is here level, so they can do that. They're also a licensed grease hauler here in Tewksbury, so I don't think that'll be a problem. The technology on the new unit is substantially different than the Big Dipper, though, so I think that once we kind of explain that to the board, I think you'll see that it's a bit of a difference. So, in general, though, I think that that system will still work in their facility as it was originally intended in the variance. I think we can make a submission and talk about it.
Now, we have a way of determining what the fog output is in these places, like one restaurant as opposed to the next, like the amount of, I don't know, deep fried foods they process as opposed to another place that is something like this may be suitable in, as opposed to something that's going to be pumping out fogs, like you read about, is there some type of a calculation that you use that would, help me feel better about these things? I don't like the mechanical things anyway. They just don't, I've had experience with them, but I've been in the business for as long as you, if not longer. I'm a little older than you, and I've had nothing but bad experiences with those things.
So I think that your question about how much fog is extracted is
Well,
really.
being generated based on what you recommend or what you design or what you propose. Input, output.
Sure, and to be clear with the board, I'm not a plumbing engineer. I'm a construction manager that manages solutions for clients, whether they're legal or construction or engineering. And many times that means I have to make a couple of different people unhappy. So sometimes you have to push engineering a little bit harder to find a better solution. Sometimes it's pushing a contractor to do something that doesn't really make sense to them, but it fits the regulation. Sometimes I get pushed a little bit to come up with a more creative legal solution. But to answer your question, I'm not sure that there's any calculation that's different for an automatic electric. I haven't really talked to a manufacturer of those. I originally pitched one of those as a solution at Cary Plaza, but the board was in the midst of the Big Dipper fiasco, so that wasn't really
Well, the reason
viable. over there.
I mean, I know that for Chinese restaurants, there's a calculation that's used in determining what the frequency of cleaning the subsurface grease traps are, based on the amount of, I
Grease
mean.
production.
Yeah, and, you know, it's a twofold question. It's like, when do you use that in your calculation to make a recommendation or a proposal? And number two is like, does that put you out of the realm of a mechanical bull in the kitchen, you know, for the reasons that we all know, the things are prone to breaking down. They can be bypassed. They can just be, I mean, they're open. They're an open product. You can fool with those things. We've had experiences in town. I can throw a stone and hit the building from here, where they were just bypassing it. And that didn't have a good outcome for the three houses that sit behind the building.
Sure, I mean, I understand that concern. I think that's part of what we need inspection for, and you know, quarterly servicing on the units. To answer your question about grease production, yeah, there's a couple different ways to do grease production calculations. There's a grease production calculation in the plumbing code. There's a grease production calculation in the septic code. Everything I've done has been, the engineers have been using the plumbing code, because really anything connected to sewer is supposed to be designed by that plumbing code, according to the plumbing code. So you're not really using the septic solution. But then, so for instance, a company like Shire actually has a way to do grease production according to the, I'm probably going to get it wrong, but it's the Plumbing Engineers Society, National Plumbing and Engineers Society. And there's a whole section in their design handbook that goes specifically to what you're talking about grease production, and that's how you figure out cleaning frequencies. So to give you an example, the system at Luna Rosa, the first iteration from the engineer came back with a cleaning frequency of 30 days. Well, that's a little onerous on the restaurant to be pumping all of these grease interceptors every 30 days. So it's better to increase the size based upon grease production for that type of restaurant. And there's factors that go into it. Do they serve on dishes? Do they have flatware and dishes that get washed in a dishwasher versus a pizza place that serves everything in paper and goes out the door? There's almost nothing that gets cleaned. There's some cooking vessels that get cleaned, but you don't have any dishes, you don't have any glassware, you don't have any silverware running through a dishwasher, you know. And even then, if you look at a place like the Pizza Bar, where we did a unit, if they're washing dishes, they're not making money. So the way their system is set up is to cook something on the grill or make a sandwich, you know, cold sandwich, wrap it up, ship it out. And if they have an intermediate step where they're going to be dirtying a lot of dishware, it's not making money for them. So Lisa's Pizza it's a pizza shop. Most of their stuff goes out the door on in takeout. Anybody that sits and eats there is eating off of paper plates. So the grease loading that goes down the drain is very minimal. And those calculations all take that into effect. There's some other factors that go into that formula too, such as where it's located. So your like highway rest stop has a much higher grease production factor just because of location. So you kind of take into that location factor into play too. So yes, we'll submit it to you, Charlie. I'll be glad to meet with you if you want to talk
You
about
probably
it.
have to explain it to me, because I'm still real curious on that Shire product, because when they go in and they test it, say, well, there's no grease in here.
You're gonna show 'em a
Well,
picture.
That's not good. If there's no grease in
Get
that
a
thing,
picture.
where'd
He'll
it
show
go?
you.
Well, it depends. Where is the grease?
Where'd the grease go?
So here's,
And don't forget that, of course, Kevin Hardiman, I don't know where he stands on either of these. So he's going to be that
He's
just
still in
person who's
review,
looking at the
Yeah,
sewers.
yeah.
And so I'll let you know, he might, I don't know what he's going to feel about the
I'm just-
proposal. So that will be the first stop before he,
Yeah.
because we got to get by him before we even want to come here, you guys.
So it may be helpful to have somebody here to explain that in more detail than I can on how this system is different. I do know some of the stuff, but I wasn't, here prepared to talk on
Well, let's see if
on
it gets,
automatic
let's see if
electric,
we get over the hurdle of engineering and plumbing
Right.
before it even becomes an issue of whether or not it's okay.
That's right.
Because, I mean, we don't even know what their thoughts are on the mechanicals, because we haven't had an application with one yet.
I get concerned about the mechanicals when they pass hands from one owner to the other. It seems like the breakdowns are almost consistent with the transfer of ownerships on these things, and then the service plan's out the window, and,
Yeah,
there's a delay.
New company, didn't
Yeah,
sign the contract.
honestly, just the time it takes to get a new service agreement
Sure.
together and get
Yep.
someone in there, now you have an issue. That should almost be a seamless
Transition.
situation where if you're doing a transfer, you should have to bring that system clean right there and then. And that service agreement should be in place as part of the transfer. It should be in place as part of the food permit.
And if we can get the property owner to be co-responsible, then
That's nice if we can do that, but from the standpoint of just the transfer alone
Yeah.
is where we really probably should be mindful that if we can monitor that, we can monitor the system being a little bit more in compliance with its standards and its operation maintenance agreement.
Well, to that point, Susan and I have worked on a couple projects now where we've done interceptor maintenance agreements, where the property owner signed on as well. And to give you an example, in Luna Rosa's case, you've got Luna Rosa, the operating entity, but those folks also own the place. They signed it to themselves. And for Susan's point was in case ownership changed, whether the property owner entity changed or the Luna Rosa entity changed, there's still this agreement in place as to whose responsibility is for what. Those agreements, we've submitted them before, but they're a little bit more blown out. It's not just a one-page agreement. This is what you're going to do. This is what I'm going to do. There's some best practices and things like that that are right in the agreement. So if Susan needs to go down, she can say, this is what you signed on, this is what you were told about, this is what you have to do.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, any of these operation and maintenance manuals, best practice, if you look at it from a standpoint of what conservation requires, I mean, they're all recorded. Okay, I mean, I
A
don't
lot
say,
more complicated.
I don't recommend recording everything, but, in some places, recording is almost the only way that you can put the public on notice, because someone's going to search the title and they say, oh, by the way, have you seen this operation and maintenance agreement? It may be only a one-pager, but it's directing you to where it is, who's got it, and what needs to be done. So to be honest with you, where you have things that can fail, things that are catastrophic failures, maybe that recording thing is something that really should be considered, even if it's a one-page document, to put the next victim on notice.
Victim.
I'm sorry, did I use the word victim?
You did.
I meant next owner.
Next one,
Well, at least it's tied to the food permit though, so.
Yes, that is time, yeah.
but you're right, yes.
well, thank you for coming up again.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
I was wondering why you were hanging around.
Think of all the good recipes you're getting.
I'm gonna run now. I had a picture.
Yes, he did have a picture of the inside of the Winners? No, not Winners. Luna Rosa? No. Which one is it?
So we just finished Luna Rosa
Yeah.
at the beginning of August, and I was in just checking on its performance. So this is the grease trap, not the grease interceptor. And I was actually surprised at how clear the water is. So what is happening here is, this is sort of, remember the grease trap being the first trap in the system. The flow is coming in here, being forced down to the bottom of the trap. And then the grease comes up to the surface, that's what all this brown stuff is. In Luna Rosa, it's mostly oil. And then, as Charlie was describing earlier, this tee actually goes all the way down to the bottom. So the grease floats, water stays on the bottom, and it's coming out, and you can actually see all the way to the bottom. That's full. I was actually surprised how clear that was coming out of just the grease trap. And then in Little Rosa's case, we needed a little more capacity, so rather than making it 2 tanks that were bigger, we added a third
Don't
one.
be sitting down again.
In Little Rosa's case, we put in 3 traps, so
Lisa will laugh.
it did a little bit better. It'll have 3 stages of filtration.
Well, thank you again, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Drop the mic. Out.
Thanks, Paul.
Done. You're out.
Okay. Discussion? I don't think we have anything listed. Director reports.
Just to let you know, we're getting ready to, we've been working diligently, Lisa has, as the point person with this People GIS. She's probably the toughest customer for their designer. She's on them every day. You didn't, I need you to fix this, you need to fix that. When I click this, it does that, it's, so she's trying, but we're getting ready for the batch, time to, get ready to put out the new permit applications. We need, not only do we have a new system, we have new prices, we have new costs for people, so they're gonna need to deal with the fact that they're, we've got doing something else, plus they're gonna be paying more, and we make sure that the numbers are right, and she's doing a great job. And so the inspection part, we have half of the inspection, probably half, because we don't have the food, we don't have housing, a couple of others. But for complaints and stuff, we now can, generate them on our tablets if we want, or on the computer. So it's just, it's coming along, so still moving forward. Open cases, I had a couple of questions. So the Saladinos, they're working with an attorney. There was a case, an ACO, the ACOs brought a case against them or him, and they're coming to a possible agreement. And I just read it for the first time before I left today. You're welcome to look at it because it's not a finished product yet, but it includes some of what we want. Does not include anything about structures, so because that's not really part of the criminal part, so that would have to be separate. Their attorney's not looking to include the non-criminal and the criminal things together. But the family, I guess, is committed to, they have someone working with the lawyer, with the couple, and not just them on their own. And he does speak Italian. So that is, hopefully will be signed soon. And 7 South Amos, we're waiting. We had went to court. The occupant is safely not living there at the moment, based on, there's a placard on the door due to unsafe conditions. They have 30 days. We had a good meeting in court about it. They have 30 days to get us a plan to how they're going to remediate. Meanwhile, though, there's no occupancy, at least overnight. Fire is concerned about safety as well as the load on the structure. So they may be pursuing that separately to us, but they do have a large group of veterans assisting, I guess. I've been told it's large, haven't seen them, assisting the resident. So we hope for good things. We don't know, but so the next step is just waiting for the plan. And then we'll see how it goes. So we have a next court date is scheduled for October 7th. If the plan comes in and it's acceptable, I can just put that date off. They don't mind that as long as everything's moving forward. Those are the 2 that I was going to update on.
I think it's one thing to add on the Saladinos is that this is all regarding the annals, but nothing about the structures that are on the property.
Right, because the ACOs brought this case separately, that, like I said, I'm trying to get ours connected so I don't have to go separately to court. So we're seeing where this shakes out, and then we'll have to deal with the other part.
I guess the other part for the board, since we
be-
did not meet in August, and there had been an August 10th deadline for them to,
Oh, right, just, so the update is that Pam did, our animal inspector did go. verified that there were still, I think there were 10 hens, and I don't believe there were many other animals that I can think of right now. I think it was the 10, but the order was for them to all be gone and the structures to, be gone. The structures are not gone, although there was a dumpster filled at least once of other items from the property, trying to clean up the property. So there's an
Right, so we-
attempt to clean up, but she just observed, she didn't tell them anything else to do, because she knows now it's in the legal course that they didn't pursue. So since this other case is happening, with advice of town attorney, we're kind of, that one is much more severe as far as a criminal case, and then, if they can succeed in not having any animals, at least we can ensure it won't be any worse.
And Mr. Saladino's registration for keeping of animals was revoked as well,
Yes.
part of all this.
There is some consideration for some dogs to be allowed that are inside dogs. I don't know what you call them. They're not dogs that are kept in the garage or,
Real domestics,
Ankle biters. is
Ankle
what they
biters,
call
I
them.
real
call them.
domestics.
Call them-
Not hunting dogs.
No, right, not hunting dogs. I don't know if that agreement's going to be signed yet. It's just, this is the proposal of not going forward with the case, so. We have flu clinics coming up. Sarah, take one, pass them on. Flu is late, so the vaccine is coming late, so she pushed them up. Usually she'd do them a little earlier. And we hope they don't get postponed. They've let us know, they've just sent us a small amount. I think she got 30 doses to start, so.
Well, there's been shortages in the past, there's been different strains, there's been other problems in the supply chain, so.
Yeah, their reasoning is they're trying to do better, apparently. So they're trying to have a better mix or whatever, and it's taking longer. I
There are
don't know if
multiple-
that's the case, but
Multiple locations for flu, check with your employers
Yeah.
and check with everybody else.
yeah, I'm sure some of them are getting at the Walgreens and such. Tewksbury Fall Festival is next Sunday. We have, I would say, it's maybe a dozen food places, and there are about 50 vendors. This is much larger, I think, than it's been in the last couple of years. It's all going to be on the side on Livingston, on the recreation side, instead of in the fields, except for the rides. There are some rides this year will be in the fields, and everything else will be over there. And they'll have a petting zoo for the kids and lots of interesting food. Somebody was shaking the tree. We've got things from different parts of the state. It's not just local, so it'll be very interesting. I'm going to come back and be there for that with Shannon to inspect next Sunday. Safe Halloween is October 27th. She'll be hopefully doing some flu shots there if we have it. And Emergency Preparedness Month, we didn't actually, did you have anything you wanted to talk about and encourage people to do as far as being prepared?
No, I wish that I had remembered to bring the theme list, but more just,
This is the time of year.
yeah, it is the time of year, and they'd already gone through hurricane preparedness, and it's just a reminder that
We do lose power.
we lose power, and it's good to have make sure you're stocked up in batteries, you are properly storing gas for your generators that hopefully you're using outside, and just have a plan prepared for what happens if you do lose power. And I guess is the other announcement, if there is a power outage in town, you can call the police department, and they will let you know if and where there is a warming center.
Can you sign up online if you want the phone number to get the reverse call?
Yeah, and then
The
on the
Code
Code
Red?
Red, even if you already are getting Code Red, if you go to the Code Red website and the police department's website has information on it, you can fine tune what types of alerts you get and which phone numbers. And then National Grid, I believe, had a new app that it'll actually tell you to your address, estimated time of power restoration if something were to happen.
And as far as mosquitoes and EEE, just let you know, I have been working with superintendents and town manager and the chiefs, to not only just keep the education out there, but we've had the The school's done twice. We are surrounded by high and critical type towns. We are assuming, you have to assume, just like with ticks, you know, with ticks you assume, just don't get bit. That's the only way you can not get Tripoli, is to not get bit. So it's really up to personal protection right now. Temperatures fluctuate. Sprays don't always work right now, so they can't get out all the time, because once it goes below 55 degrees, they generally don't spray. So it's really, this is a bad year, obviously, for Tripoli in our area. We haven't had that, and it's usually, cyclical, so it may come again next year. West Nile's been low this year, so they're usually on like a 3-year cycle. But we really, emailed the town manager, we were talking about maybe utilizing, if you saw the new beautiful sign out here that lights up now, the town sign, I said, well, maybe we can put something up there, or maybe on the orange signs. You see them all over the state now, the orange DOT signs, MassDOT signs that say Tripoli, go to the state website for information, check the maps, just take care of your kids. This town is not restricted time for activities. That's really a personal thing.
But you should be emptying your small pools.
Oh, please, yes.
You should be emptying all the standing water. There should be nothing left at this time of the year that isn't green algae anyways. So it would seem to me that, everyone should take those personal protections around their own yards, remove the standing water, flip the pools over, and make sure that there's nothing close to breeding and close to your living arrangements.
Just remember, we need that hard frost before you change your minds on, just because it feels like cooler because it's 60, it's not. We need that hard frost for at least a few hours before we can at least feel a little bit sense of security. Any other questions you have for me about it's been a really, really crazy, wild month.
So I do have a question, because we were talking about this the other day. Article 16 in the town warrant for the upcoming town
Yes, I
meeting
read that today.
on October 1st. Article 16 is to see if the town will adopt following general bylaw, take action relative to maintenance of vacant buildings and land. And as part of it, the building commissioner, police chief, fire chief, and the health director or their designee shall have the authority to periodically inspect the exterior and interior of any building subject to this bylaw for compliance.
Right.
And I guess my question to you, and I don't know if you had a chance to find out, is do you know who actually put forth this? Because
The assistant town manager was, I guess, asked by the selectmen to draft something. I asked him if it came from any particular community. He said it is modeled after Arlington. So if any, don't know, I could check with people in Arlington to see how well it's doing. He said basically it's to establish the authority. There are a lot of things that we already do that you can see there's things in there about colors of if you
Before they
if you-
drafted,
If you
did they
board
even-
up, if you board it up, it's supposed to be about color. It's not necessarily public health. It's really, there's beautification issues clearly in there, and upkeep, and then, of course, keeping your yard, a certain way, I guess. We have our own things that we do with it, and we do respond to any complaint. We do try to identify, we just recently sent one out for East Street. We haven't found the homeowner yet. It appears not lived in, but then when we did the investigation, I looked in the trash can, and there's cans and bottles and Dunkin' Donuts cups that look like maybe somebody's been trying to clean it up. So trying to find the person, that didn't look like I was living there. But so we do try and investigate any one of these. But if something's abandoned and there's no public health issue, we don't just, so this may address some new things that are not public health per se.
So nobody in any of those divisions was actually informed, or was it discussed with them first whether it made sense, or just like someone copied
I don't
something?
attend the senior staff meeting, so they might have talked about it, because I'm sure they talked about that, but I didn't, And he knows what we do, so he probably just they worked with the selectmen, yeah.
Yeah, when I saw it, I was just more concerned about not knowing what type of increased workload this might mean for the department.
He asked me one question, and I said, well, the only thing is the word inside. How often would we need to go inside? And he didn't think that that was something that was going to be very often. It's very difficult to just get inside a place, too. So my comment is really, it's going to be driven by probably legal, because you'd have to gain access. You can't, just gain, right? You can't
What does
just
the
go in.
AG say about this?
The AG, I don't know. I literally just read it today, so I don't know.
But generally, the AG has to approve these types of things. So
After
if
they're
it-
approved, right? I mean,
Well,
after they go
not-
through
not-
town meeting?
It's already
is it-
been approved.
No,
It's
I
been
mean, through-
approved in Arlington.
Oh,
Is there
yeah.
AG comments from Arlington?
I don't know.
Well, that might be helpful for the citizens here to determine what the comments were from the AG. Maybe it was just rubber stamped.
It could have been in for years. I don't
Right,
know if
who
it's
knows?
something
But,
new or years.
but those things are available and,
Yeah,
you know,
I'm sure he did.
for a full discussion,
I'm sure he did some research.
yeah, for a full discussion, that's probably relevant.
I only brought this question because when the shopping bag ban came into place and we read the warrant initially, and it was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
the department was going to be responsible for it, that was,
Yeah. I
Interesting.
mean, we would still only enforce public health issues, of course, so.
okay. So
Mr.
any other,
Chairman, is it my turn?
I think it's become your turn.
I'd like to make a motion that we close tonight's meeting.
Someone like to second that motion?
I'm going to second it for Charlie.
Okay.
Thank you, Robert.
So the
Gerard?
motion has been put forth and second to adjourn tonight's meeting. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Motion carries unanimously. It's 8:21 PM. Good night, Tewksbury.
Good night, Tewksbury.
Thank you.